And I have not read these before, so here we go. What punishment would you support for deputies who kill young people in our communities? Vicki, Hennessy?
Somebody killed somebody, yeah, murder.
It depends. It's going to depend on how that crime was committed, and if it was a crime. And I would say that young people, let's step back a second. So this is an unanticipated question for me, but I do believe that it's an interesting question. You're talking about deputies, you're talking about law enforcement in general. You're talking about law enforcement who take other lives and whether those lives matter, and of course they do. And then the question is, do we punish people? If it's found, investigated thoroughly by an independent third party and found to have been something that the deputy did that was definitely a homicide, then I would say we treat it like any other homicide. But if we're talking about somebody who is faced with an exigent circumstance where there is a threat of life, a certain threat of the person taking somebody else's life, then I would say that's a different investigation. So once again, it's the investigation that's going to tell us what the punishment should be. And I think the punishment should be just like the punishment would be for anybody else.
Thank you. Mirkarimi.
Because of the climate nationally and because of the history of disproportionate force by law enforcement, it would be easy to pander to that question by saying, off with their heads. But we are the sheriffs, we are law enforcement, and we do have to respect the rule of law. And if there is a deputy or somebody in law enforcement who's overstepped their bounds, then there needs to be a proper investigation and there needs to be the proper response that makes sure that that person, if they are found guilty or if they found complicit, is removed. And that would not allow complicit or guilty of that not being the proper shooting that it should have been, for whatever the circumstances are, they would be removed. But even more to the point, what we need is a complete upgrade in our use of force policy. And that's exactly what we're doing in the Sheriff's Department right now. I have reached out to my command staff and our attorneys, and we're reaching out to community, as a matter of fact, which is never done by law enforcement, that puts under review what our use of force policy should be. Because I wanted to believe that we're the alternative to the San Francisco Police Department. They are the largest law enforcement agency in the city. We are the second largest law enforcement agency in the city. We may not always see eye to eye, which is why I take very core deeply that as the elected sheriff by the people of San Francisco, that I uphold this rule of review and transparency in law, maybe in a different way that others do for other law enforcement agencies.
I wanted to follow that up with a question that I actually didn't answer. What do you, it's not really related, but what do you each think about the continued use of tasers by the Sheriff's Department? And Mirkarimi.
The sheriffs have very few tasers, and it is not often used. We keep, tabs on that, but it has been used before. And if there's ever been any improper use of a taser inside a facility because there is a level of violence that is required, the deputy staff has proven to use that, I think, in a measured way. But if there's ever been a deputy or somebody who's using it that is a violation of our policy or violation of law, then that needs to be held accountable. Absolutely.
I agree that in the Sheriff's Department, tasers are used very, very infrequently. And there are very strict rules for using tasers in the San Francisco Sheriff's Department. The tasers are computerized, and we know when they're fired, we know whenever they're activated. And in order for a taser to be used, a supervisor must first approve it, and there are only a few people who are authorized to actually use the tasers. Those people have special training, reports must be written, and then there's review. So I think that the use under these circumstances is used, and I've seen them used to prevent fights in the jail when somebody is fighting quite a bit. I've seen them used appropriately, and it cuts down on injuries for both the person who is fighting and the deputies who are responding.
So it sounds like you're both in agreement that tasers have continued to be used in the sheriff's department if you became sheriff, okay, or if you became sheriff again. Both of you. What are your thoughts on a ballot initiative in 2016 to legalize marijuana?
No, I'm fine with that. I actually support legalizing marijuana, but I actually support, I want to support it in a very, very thoughtful way, much like Colorado has legalized marijuana. I am concerned about unintended consequences, but I have seen a lot of harm come from people being in jail for using marijuana or for selling marijuana. But I want it to be regulated if it's going to be legalized. And I don't want people to smoke in front of other people, just like they aren't allowed to smoke cigarettes. I want the same rules to apply.
And I'm going to ask for a follow-up question, and Ross Mirkarimi can answer it both together, and that is, do you see a conflict with the federal law that if it was legalized nationally? How do you see the relationship of local and federal law around drugs, illegal drugs, current illegal drugs?
Well, that's interesting because it's almost in some ways parallel to the example of ICE and our local laws. And our local laws take precedence when you're sheriff. When you're the sheriff, you have to take a look and you have to obey the rule of the law. You're obeying the rule of federal, state, and local law, but local law will take precedence.
Thank you. And Ross Mirkarimi.
It's actually not true. Federal law supersedes local law. So the heart of the question is, what courage do we have in San Francisco to defy federal government? And that's exactly the courage I have been really speaking out on for well over 20 years. I was the supervisor in 2005 and 2006 that wrote the city's first medical cannabis dispensary regulations. It was the 88-page law that would do what Proposition 215 in Senate Bill 420 did not, and that was provide guidance to the neighborhoods that were all frustrated by saying, we support medical cannabis, we just don't support 100 dispensaries in our neighborhood. And we stepped up and wrote the guidelines, public safety, land use, etc. And that became the groundwork, and then for us making the case on legalization. Of the 58 county sheriffs that are elected in California, I'm the only sheriff that's on record to support the legalization of marijuana. And I have been campaigning on this, and I'm part of a coalition that is helping advise for the 2016 ballot referendum. I am really glad that there are others that are joining, I think, the movement for legalization. But it's not just about marijuana. It is the due recognition that the war of drugs in this country has failed miserably. Now, why there has been such an over-incarceration, one of the reasons that there's been such an over-incarceration and, this puffing up of the corrections industry is because of the war on drugs. And San Francisco was not foreign to that war of drugs. So I'm happy to see the trends that are taking, but we need to speak out beyond our borders. And that means that if San Francisco, like same-sex marriage and like any other issue where we are renowned for, we continue to ring that bell around the state and around this country, that even if in the federal government that marijuana stupidly is classified as a Schedule I narcotic, then we should defy that law because their law is bad and our law is better.
There's a question that I don't really understand, but I'm sure someone wrote it, so how do you feel about goodbye visits? I don't.
Along the question earlier about children of the incarcerated, we're the first county, and I really want to congratulate my staff and our contracted out staff. One Family is the program, and others where goodbye visits are crushing. The only county that does this, I hope more counties do this, but for a parent, a mother or a father, who's going to be sent upstate, never to see their child again, or have the ability to be able to have contact with their child, we allow them to have that contact visit with their child to prepare them, for the parent to prepare them so that they can have that goodbye. Do you know just how it really affects a child when their loved one or mother and father is going to go away for many years or decades? Yes. The role that the Sheriff's Department must play in the future, starting now, is not be that adversary that keeps people apart, and recognize that unless there is some legal or health reason, that says otherwise, we should be bringing people together. An imprint that we will make on children of incarcerated who know just how damaging, but yet how constructive that experience is as a goodbye visit. I truly believe what we're doing here will become a model for the state and for this country, because it's necessary.
Thank you. Okay. What is your viewpoint on programs to educate youth and adults so they don't wind up in jail?
That's a kind of a very broad question, but I would say that any program that helps youth and adults not end up in jail is certainly a very commendable program. And I believe that there are many programs that are out there. I would say within the jails, I think that the best program that I have seen, and one of the best that I appreciate for people not to come back to jail to prevent recidivism, is the charter school program. I think the charter school program is one of the best programs I've ever seen in my 35 years. There are also many other good programs to prevent or to help people get the tools they need so they don't come back to jail. I think, once again, the Garden Project is another program that the jail has that works with at-risk youth to keep them from coming to jail, to give them skills in working in the garden, but also it's not about the garden, it's about getting skills, life skills, to work in any job and be responsive and helpful and learn civic responsibility. So I think all those programs are good.
Thank you. Mirkarimi.
I am so proud of my predecessor, Sheriff Mike Hennessy, and his administration for being the brainchild that started the first charter high school in the United States in a county jail. That is the Five Keys Charter High School. It is so cool and so elegantly subversive that what they did was, unlike the rest of the country that often takes public education dollars at the expense of the public and taxpayer and children and build more jails, what Mike and his administration did was put a high school in the middle and built a jail around it, so that he made sure that anybody would come in contact and that would be with us has an opportunity to get their high school diploma. And I knew about that years ago, now that it's in its 11th year, and I swore that that is going to become a model. And I'm proud of the fact that as sheriff, not only do we well showcase it here, we just export it to the jail system that is the largest county jail system in the United States, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. And when I had conversations while Five Keys was facilitating what the possible transition would look like of us having the San Francisco Sheriff's Department, 5 Keys Charter High School, and the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. I mean, what a turning point. Their jail population is 20,000. Ours is about 1,100, almost 1,200. And to have a high school in Los Angeles say the San Francisco Sheriff's Department 5 Key Charter School, because that was the demand, then that just tells us the Giants are better than the Dodgers.
Another question, and we are going to be closing in about 5 minutes. I know, it's been so wonderful from my perspective. Do you support anyone in custody who lost a loved one to violence or natural causes to attend the funeral service of that person to help their rehabilitation? I think that didn't read right. Do you support? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Ross?
Yeah, we are gesturing here. I think we'll both agree on this. I think it's natural. We want to be compassionate, but we also want to be responsible. And that there have been people that we have allowed to attend the funerals of loved ones, and that there might be people who are so at risk and such a danger that we may not be able to guarantee their safety or the safety of others if they're allowed as well too. So it is strictly case by case.
I would agree with that. It is strictly case by case, and it's something that when I was in the jails that I arranged for many of these things to happen, these trips to funerals, and getting people so that they have the proper clothes to wear and that they can say goodbye to their loved one in the privacy of the funeral home or with their family around them is very important and is something that should be continued.
And I believe the last question we're going to have from the audience is, how well represented are women in the Sheriff's Department? And I think we'll start with you, Vicki, Hennessy.
Well, women were always very well represented in the Sheriff's Department. I came in off the first list of women that was combined with men. So it was women and men, and it was also a list where there was a targeted recruitment for people of color and LGBT people. So my contemporaries coming up in the department were from everywhere, and it was one of the sources of enrichment for me to have that. And also, and I really spent a lot of time talking to the people in jail, and that was another source of enrichment, as interesting as that might sound to people, but it was. So women have done very well. I was very fortunate to progress very quickly through civil service examinations and appointments to positions, but there are many women in very high positions in the Sheriff's Department as opposed to some other departments around here. So I think women are very well represented and do a very good job.
Thank you. Ross?
I think we absolutely agree, but there's one fact I want to share with you, and that is that our department, the San Francisco Sheriff's Department, has only had one academy class for new hires in 5 years. And I have begged Room 200, the mayor's office and the board of supervisors, that if they're going to go to the trouble of doing a multi-year staffing plan with the San Francisco Police Department, then they should also do that for us, because attrition, people retire from the department, and it has been slow going for us to be able to replete those that move on. So as a department head, it is frustrating, because I think Mike Hennessy and I think in the past have well demonstrated their commitment to diverse hiring, to hiring the women, to hiring all populations. And I don't want to let go of that, but I need help from all of you. That when it comes to the budget time process, we shouldn't really always be in the shadow of the police department. We should be really hiring, I think, robustly to attend to the needs of the department, of the Sheriff's Department. That includes women, that includes minorities and other populations that where we may be lacking. And I think that that really needs to be a galvanized effort, and it's coming up in the budget season.
And that is our last question, but I did want to give each of the candidates an opportunity to say a final statement about the upcoming 8 months and what endorsements are coming out right now. There's a lot of politicking behind the scenes. But I'd like you to start your statement by saying something that you like about the other one. Ross.
Oh my God. She's clever.
I've known Vicki for some years. I was a member of the Board of Supervisors, and in her capacity in the Department of Emergency Management, I liked the way you presented, and you had earned, I think, my regard some time ago. And even though we may have differences about where the department should go and how far it should go, I thought it was a good move to have you as a caretaker. And I appreciated that very much. Even despite, I think, the context and how it happened, it made me just feel that, okay, and we may have our differences, and those might be showcased, I think, in the campaign itself about the direction of the Sheriff's Department, but I consider you a peer.
And your closing statement?
No.
Oh, no, let's do this part.
Oh, thank you. So I will say something nice about Ross, that a few of the things I think I already mentioned that I thought he did a good job on, but one of them that we did not mention tonight was the reduction in the cost of inmate calls. I think that was a great move. I think that was, well, as a person who actually knows somebody in jail or has known somebody in jail, I have to admit I got that phone bill and I was shocked. And it, and I can afford it, so I had to think about people who can't afford it. It was a horrible press, and I think that was actually a very good move, and I appreciate the sheriff for taking that step. And that's all I was thinking.
2 minutes.
Well, I want to thank the organizers for putting this event on. I truly appreciate you helping facilitate this. I want to thank my amazing family, mi esposa, Eliana, our son. It's early bedtime, so he's not here. And I want to thank the community. I want to thank the community for really taking interest. I think that, for 32 years, my predecessor, Sheriff Mike Hennessy, became such a kind of normal part of the landscape that people forgot to really follow the Sheriff's Department because I think they just became lulled into the, we trust Mike, we get where Mike is coming from, and they just never bothered, I think, to, after some years, I think have that kind of scrutiny, which is why I was well honored when Mike asked me to succeed him.
Medical pot activists, Hayes traders who ratted out Ed Rosenthal, and AxisOfLove also let them know that they weren't happy with people, dispensary owners giving evidence, giving testimony against actually the whole patient community, not just, Ed Rosenthal was just a figurehead. And in court, we went to the court hearings back in 2007, and that set a precedent for patients can be prosecuted. So we'll see, because the Supreme Court's supposed to hear it soon. Maybe, I don't know, I just heard wind of it. Let's talk about it. If you heard anything, let me know. And, the feds told the court pot is still as dangerous as heroin. Okay. Marijuana policy in 2015, 8 big things to watch. Okay, we're back to last month's tweets. Now I want to get to the main story tonight was marijuana monopolies and how Canada is doing something dangerously. the stakes are very high for legalization, and because, see, they can say legalize cannabis, that's good for smokers. Well, not if corporations take it over, and then you can't have seeds, you can't grow it. I mean, there's all sorts of creepy controls that can happen. Now, the liberal, there's a progressive guy that runs a company called GW. It's a pharmaceutical company in England, and Canada is, you know, they're like this, England and Canada. So the economical and political stakes of legalization means total control of the medicine, power to determine who lives and dies, who's fertile, who's sterile, who's mad, who's sane. If you legalize it, the corporations will just take it over, is just a very real concern. Like I said, it's the most useful herb on the planet. You can use it in virtually every kind of plastic can be made out of hemp. Everything you use plastic for, you can make with hemp. I know that sounds crazy, but they've even built a car out of hemp. But that was something happened to that car. Nobody wants anyone to know about it anymore. Maybe we're evolving back to where we were. So there's a lot of people who thought of lame excuses for having say over who or anyone gets to grow, deal, and use the herb. With Moses, it was too sacred. I mean, it goes back thousands of years. Cannabis is a great herb. It's so great, people just, it just blows their mind. And Moses, it was sacred. The Catholics actually called it devil weed and burned witches for using it as medicine. That was considered witchcraft to a herbal medicine at times.